Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. First, I just want to say thank you for all of the love and support I've been getting lately, especially my last video. I figured that one would kind of trend upward in regards to views, given the fact that it was about a trade, and I try to get it out there as soon as I can. So I just want to say thank you. And to anyone that is new to my channel, that is first seeing my videos for the first time, hi, I do consistent NHL content. I try to bring out all things NHL that, in my opinion, I feel need to be talked about, or just that I want to talk about truly. So I post pretty much either every other day or every couple days, depending on how my schedule works. But I really try to put out as much content as I possibly can. And for whoever's watching this that has seen previous videos, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it, and it really does go a long way, in my opinion. So you clicked on the video because you saw I'm talking about, in this video, all the Canadian teams and what can be expected from them leading up to the NHL trade deadline, which is really around the corner. And when I look at all of the teams currently in Canada, especially going for a playoff spot, things are going to be really interesting. And I have a lot that I have to break down, so I'm going to try to do it as quick as I can, but also as thorough as I can. So starting with the Vancouver Canucks, the Canucks obviously had a massive win last night, and I believe last night is them honoring the Sedins as well, being their numbers retired, and I know that they also honored all their legends recently as well. But the Canucks, in 58 games played this season, they have 32 wins, 21 losses, 5 overtime losses for 69 points. That's good for first currently in the Pacific Division. If you would have told me that the Canucks would be at this place currently this season, I would have said you're crazy, honestly. Vancouver's been a team that has been mediocre for quite some time now, so I'm really happy. I'm glad to see that a lot of their young forwards and just overall team is really coming to fruition now, and they are making a strong chance to make playoffs, and I couldn't be happier for them, truly. And they have currently the 9th ranked offense and the 12th ranked defense, and some injuries that they're dealing with as well. They have obviously Josh Levo. I didn't list all players injured for these teams, just ones I felt are most important. Levo's obviously been out. He won't. I don't believe he'll be back anytime soon. Furland, who will be back soon, I know that, and Tyler Mott has been out, and Brock Besser could be back this weekend, but that is yet to be seen. Besser is obviously the biggest one out of all of them with injury, but even with all these injuries that Vancouver's been dealing with in their forward group, they have still been playing some very solid hockey, and truly, really surprising in my opinion. And like I said, I couldn't be happier for them. And my biggest problem with them though is that for the deadline cap space they have on cap friendly right now is only $216,000. So that's huge. In my opinion, Vancouver should be buying come the deadline. But the question is, how are they going to do it? In my opinion, it would be great if they could either bring a third party into the trade to really take on some cap for them, because they have a lot of contracts on that team that really aren't looking great, especially when it comes to their depth forwards. So if they can do something like that and bring in a top 6 winner and some help on defense, that would be fantastic for them. But Vancouver, in my opinion, they're going all in this year, and they should really make some moves at the deadline if they possibly can, because there are some teams that should be selling that have plenty of cap space that will be willing to take on that as long as they get a good enough return, whether it be solid draft picks or more top tier prospects. Now the Toronto Maple Leafs I have next, and I've talked about some of these teams too in previous videos, so if you haven't checked them out, please do. But the Leafs, in 57 games played this year, they have 30 wins, 19 losses, 8 overtime losses. That's good for 68 points. And that's currently 3rd in the Atlantic, just by a hair. And they have the 4th ranked offense, but they have the 24th ranked defense. So obviously Toronto's had a roller coaster season, and the injuries that they've endured have been Morgan Rielly, the most prominent one by far. That's a huge loss for them. Ilya Mikheyev, who I'm a big fan of, it doesn't seem like he'll be back, at least during the regular season. Cody Ceci, who I'm sure a lot of Toronto Maple Leafs fans would say aren't too upset about that. And day-to-day is with Freddie Anderson still. So Toronto is another team that definitely should be buying come the deadline. I did a video on them talking about how Dubas really should not be done. I thought it was a very strong move with Campbell and Clifford, and that has really worked out for them so far. But this should only be the start. I know that they don't necessarily have a lot of cap, but given the LTIR they've been using, they do for the trade deadline at least. And if they get just rentals that can really help them on this defense, that will be massive for them. And you look at their cap, they currently have 5.8 mil that they can use come the trade deadline. So if I'm Dubas, I'm jumping on that. I'm trying to do everything I possibly can, kicking tires, to get a top four defenseman, because that will really dictate how far this team goes come playoff time, in my opinion. Because, like I said, I've talked about the Tyson Barrie deal and how I personally haven't been a big fan of it from when it first happened, my opinion. But I talked about that in the Leafs video I did as well. But next is the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers have, in 56 games played this year, have 30 wins, 20 losses, 6 overtime losses, and that's good for 66 points, and that's second in the Pacific Division, trailing the Vancouver Canucks. And they have the 12th ranked offense, and then they have the 19th ranked defense. So defense has once again not been their strong suit. Their offense isn't as good as what would be expected, but given the amount of guys around the likes of McDavid and Draisaitl, it isn't too surprising. If you look at their injuries, McDavid was just announced recently. He's out 2 to 3 weeks. That is a huge blow for them. And now James Neal is also on the injured reserve as well. And then you also have guys like Nygaard and Russell who have been out with injuries. So Edmonton has some cap space, not a lot. They have around 2.46 mil to work with come the deadline. If Ken Holland's smart, I know he's been known for, not doing great when it comes to contracts and certain deals, but Edmonton needs to make playoffs this year. Their fan base needs it. I need it. And I'm sure a lot of people around the NHL would like to see McDavid and Draisaitl back in the playoffs. So I really hope for Edmonton's case that they buy come the deadline. It's just a question of how much will they be buying, because they don't have a lot that they could necessarily do a blockbuster deal for. So once again, it could be a situation where they trade with a team, possibly like the Ottawa Senators, and I'll get to them, where the Sens have plenty of cap space, can take on a big cap hit with a not so great contract, and really go from there. So we'll see what happens, but Edmonton, in my opinion, really should be buying come the deadline. And the next is the Calgary Flames. In 58 games played, they have 29 wins, 23 losses, 6 overtime losses, and that's good for 64 points. First in the wild card spot in the Western Conference, and they have the 21st ranked offense and the 15th ranked defense. I know that their offense has been nearly what it used to be, with lacking some depth and also just having a different mentality, because I know that their head coach Jeff Ward is definitely more defensively minded from interviews I've seen with Johnny Gaudreau and other players that have talked about the reasoning for not putting up the points as much as they normally do. But Calgary is another team where they went from seeming like they would possibly be selling at the deadline some defensemen, especially, to possibly buying, because Mark Giordano, their captain, their leader on this Calgary Flames team, is currently on the injured reserve list, and he is week to week currently, which is not terrible by any means. It looks like it would have been a lot worse, so that is good that he will be back this season. And you also have guys like Valimaki, day-to-day Hamonic, and you also have day-to-day for Sam Bennett. So there are plenty of guys in that lineup that, without them, they are lacking depth on both fronts, truly. They are another team that should be buying. They have 2.3 mil of trade deadline cap space to work with. So, like I said, it's another thing. GMs need to be really smart on what they do with this deadline, because all these teams I listed so far are contending to make playoffs, and if they don't buy much at all, especially with having some significant injuries on the team, they're going to get backlash from their fan base without question. And Calgary is another team that is currently in a win-now stage, and they really need to jump on the gun and try to get things rolling and make some moves come the deadline. So, once again, expect them to be buyers. And then, next, I have the Winnipeg Jets. In 58 games played this year, they have 29 wins, 24 losses, 5 overtime losses, 63 points, and that is 1 point out of the second wildcard spot in the Western Conference. The Jets have been remarkable this season, in my opinion. While they haven't played great by any means, they also are doing fantastic given the amount of players they lost. And I talked about that in previous videos. Basically losing all that right side of the defense and then some in this past offseason. So what they have been able to do has honestly been really impressive in my opinion. But their offense isn't as good as it should be. They're currently ranked 19th in their offense, and defense they are currently ranked 13th. So their defense really has been nearly as much of a liability as one would think, but their offense it's been lacking on the scoring front. They've really been a culprit of enduring a lot of injuries to their depth forwards. Brian Little's been out, obviously. Matthew Perreault's been out. Pullman's been out. Lowry, who was having a pretty strong season, in my opinion, was out. And day-to-day is Lucas Sbisa. So Sbisa, nothing fantastic, but just adds some more defensive depth. But Winnipeg is another team where they can buy big at the deadline, and they are in a win-now stage. So why wouldn't you jump on that? In my opinion, they could easily go for a guy like Chris Kreider. They can go for the top forwards in the market, like a John Gabriel Pageau, expiring guys who, even though if they don't re-sign them, they can just go all in. I know that they have contracts they have to deal with at the end of the season, but that's fine when you're dealing with rentals. So as long as they don't give up too much in the prospect front, I think this would definitely be smart for the Jets to really go all in as well. They're right out of the playoffs. I wouldn't see why they wouldn't be buying big at the deadline, especially given that sense. It's not like they're 5, even 10 points out of the playoffs. They're only 1 point out currently. So it's anyone's game right now in regards to the Western Conference wildcard race. And next, I have the Montreal Canadiens. The Canadiens have been a big story to say the least lately. In 59 games played this year, they have 27 wins, 25 losses, 7 overtime losses, 61 points, and they are currently 8 points out of the second wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference. Montreal, I talked about this in my previous video about teams that should be selling big for fire sale, so go check that out. Montreal should be selling big at the deadline. I'm sorry, Habs fans, if any of you watch this. I just don't see how they can make a run, truly. They have the cap space, yes, but I think they're still too far out to really get a chance. And with the likes of Shea Weber now being out basically for the rest of the year, season, he's out for 6 weeks, but that could be a lot longer given the fact that he is having surgery on his foot again. This was a problem that he had not too long ago, and he's been dealing with some significant injuries really since he came into Montreal. That contract is not looking great by any means. But Weber was having a Norris caliber season, so it is really upsetting to see this happen to him. But the reality is Montreal, I know that they want to make playoffs. I completely get it. But at the same time, they have a very strong prospect pool, one of the best in the league, with very young, promising players coming up in the league that already came up this year and will come up in the years going forward. So if I'm Montreal, I'm selling big at the deadline, with especially guys like Kovalchuk that you can get a decent amount back with that contract. Jeff Petrie, in my mind, would be a perfect guy to move as well. I know that he's not a free agent at the end of the year, but it would be a smart move because you would get a very strong return for someone like him. Tatar comes to mind as well. There are plenty of guys on this Habs team that, in my opinion, the Canadiens could be making so much for this draft. And this draft looks like it could possibly be, if not the best in NHL history, then definitely one of the best. And I know that kind of stereotype gets thrown around a lot, but this year's draft is massive and it's been talked about for years now. There's no question. It's not like it's just front-loaded. It's so deep. It is unbelievably deep. And if the Canadiens sell big at the deadline, that can really set them up perfect for the future. Not just for the next couple of years, but we're talking about the next decade of a new wave, a new group of players. So, like I said, in my opinion, I really think the Habs, it would be in their best case to sell big at the trade deadline. And finishing off this video, I have the Ottawa Senators, obviously. In 56 games played, they have 18 wins, 27 losses, 11 overtime losses, 47 points, and that is third to last in the NHL. They aren't going anywhere this season. We know that. They are a rebuilding team, and that's fine. But you also look at injuries that they've dealt with. They've had Nielsen, who was playing solid throughout the season. And I'm going to say his name wrong. Borowiecki. Borowiecki. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I always messed up. The defenseman who's normally known for his physical attributes with the team, to say the least, has really had a very strong season, has had a career year in points, and really giving the Senators a good run for their money with making sure they keep him. So we'll see what happens with him. But overall, the Senators are another team that should be selling big at the deadline. You can expect Pageau to be gone. You can expect Dylan DeMello to be gone. You can expect possibly Connor Brown to be gone. And you can expect maybe Anthony Duclair, but I think it would be in their best bet to keep him because I think he's still an RFA. or they can at least they can sign him for a decent contract because he's relatively young still. I believe he's only like 24, 25. So Duclair would be perfect to keep on the team in my opinion. He's had a fantastic year for them and can be part of their core group going forward. But Senators have 27.5 mil in cap space, and the Canadians have 17.4. I just want to put that out there too. So, like I said, the Canadians would be opening up more cap, which would only benefit them going forward, and signing big name free agents that would make sense for a young core group. And let's just hope for their sake that they don't sign big names that are just big names that year but aren't necessarily that good, because obviously teams tend to overpay whenever free agency comes for guys that really aren't deserving of the money. But the Senators have 27.5 mil to work with come the deadline. They will have even more than that after the deadline. They'll probably be over 30 mil in space. So things are going to be looking good for them in the future. They have a lot of very good prospects, and this year's draft will be massive for them. They have the chance to have 2 of the top 3 picks in this year's NHL draft. So if that is the case, then the Senators are going to be rolling sooner rather than later. So that's really all I have to say for this video. I could have really went on a lot more about each team, but I wanted to kind of summarize and do the best I can without making it too long. So thank you all so much for watching. If you're a fan of any of these Canadian teams, let me know what you think. Do you agree or disagree with my thoughts on them on what they should do come the deadline? If you're an outsider fan, let me know what you think as well. And overall, just about the video, let me know what you think. I really appreciate it. So if you like the video, like, subscribe, comment, all those great things. Like I said, I really do appreciate it, and I will be back again soon.